don't know if you noticed it, but Jordan Rudess has a new album out, a new solo album, Permission to Fly. I mean, yeah, nice cover. I really like that very much. But I gotta make a little confession here. I never listened to any of Jordan Rudess's solo work. I know his Dream Theater work, I mean, he's been playing with them for ages. I know he has solo music out. I know he's been making solo music way before he even joined Dream Theater. And, you know, he's done a lot of things, but for some reason I never listened to it. And now I finally did. And I'm glad I did, because, you know, there are 5 things I like about this album.
Hey guys, this is Luke Machin here, and you're watching and listening to LiveProg.
Hey, welcome to LiveProg. I am Marcel Haster, and it's kind of a confession time. Well, this is not really a confession, and yeah, maybe it is, in a moment. I am not a lazy reviewer. I'm not. I've been always active in chasing up music that I could feature on LiveProg. But, you know, and that's the confession part of it. When it comes to Permission to Fly by Jordan Rudess, it's kind of a convenience review that I'm doing right now. That may sound a little bit strange, and I'll explain why. When I rebooted LiveProg, I got back in touch with, you know, with friends, old friends, with bands, with labels and whatnot. And one of those labels gave me access to a promo portal. And whenever there's a new release coming out on that label, they put it in the portal and I can listen to it. So I was, you know, checking out and I was like, hey man, there's a new submission in the portal. Hey, Jordan Rudess Permission to Fly. So I was like, okay, curious. I mean, that was like, hey man, I never really listened to any of his music. And honestly, it was just one click and I could listen to the album. So it was very convenient for me, very easy. So I listened. And I listened to the first song and I was like, hey man, this sounds really good. And I kept on listening to the album. And that's when I got to the point like, you know what? I really want to do a review about this because this is really amazing music. Despite the fact, you know, that it is from a promo portal, despite the fact that all my claims like I, you know, got physical media, I'm still empty-handed here. But in this case, I don't mind because I never done anything with the music of Jordan Rudess. So I figured, you know, let's make up for that. Let's make up for that and do a review of the album. And that's why, like I said, I have 5 things that I like about the album. One of the things that I like about the album, and that's kind of what struck me, is that when I was listening to it, I was like, man, this is a really full-blown, solid prog album. Heavy, experimental, emotional, mysterious, yeah, all that in it. And I was like, yeah, man, I don't believe he really did that. I mean, and then, I'm not a big fan of streaming, but in this case, streaming was kind of convenient because there I could listen to some older work from Jordan Rudess because I was curious, has he done something like this before? And I listened to, well, whatever was available on that streaming service, and that was all completely different from Permission to Fly. So I was like, wow, man, he really created an amazing album here, something that, in my opinion, he never did on his own. He did with Dream Theater, he made proggy stuff, but on his own, it was always different stuff. And if I'm mistaken, let me know in the comments because, like I said, I am no expert. I'm far from an expert from the music of Jordan Rudess. The first song really felt very progressive. The Final Threshold. When I was listening to it, it is a bit of an experimental song in it, especially with the keys and everything and with the whole melodies. Which is kind of nice. And when I listened to it, I really heard some real vintage prog atmosphere sounds in those keys, which I very much liked, but still it was kind of experimental. And then about halfway the song, the vocals come in and it really changes. It becomes real atmospheric. It becomes kind of a ballad-like song, and I gotta say, really beautiful. And I really was like, yeah, man, that is something I really like about this album. That experimental element in that first track you also hear in the second track, Into the Lair, which is a 9.5-minute epic track. And they have the part where there's really weird time signatures in it. That's like really like he really lets himself kind of go, you know, being the experimental Jordan Rudess that we know. But at the same time, with the vocals, the atmosphere that song creates, that brings me to the second thing I like about this album. And I really want to mention him, the singer on the album, Joe Payne. And I gotta be honest, I wasn't familiar with him, despite the fact that when I'm thinking back, I was like, his name popped up on social media, and now I put one and one together, and it's like, okay, he's the singer on the Permission to Fly album from Jordan Rudess. All right, and I gotta say, he has a really beautiful voice. That was something that really stood out for me. His voice really brings a beautiful atmosphere in the music, which I definitely like very much. And there are a couple of moments on the album, there are a couple of songs like Haunted Reverie and the Alchemist, where he really sings these beautiful fragile parts, and at the end it's like, oh man, it gives me goosebumps. It really gives me goosebumps, really beautiful. So he is one of the things that I really like about this album. Well, I gotta say, I really love about this album. But also, and that's not per se about Joe Payne, but the lyrical part of the album. When I read the bio, Jordan Rudess said that normally he writes the lyrics, but you know, he wants, it has to sound good. That was important to him. But this time he really wanted to put in a message in the music, in the lyrics. He wanted really to go a little bit deeper than that. And his daughter wrote the lyrics. And then his daughter wrote the lyrics, and I've been reading these lyrics, and then hearing Joe Payne bring these lyrics to life. Wow. That was really amazing. So it is really a very special album, this album, and that's why I'm really happy that I decided to listen to this album, even though it was for convenience. I'm really happy I did, because if I hadn't, you know, I would have missed out on all this. That were the two things. Let's move on to the third thing, a guitar playing dentist. Yeah! Wow, man, that's gotta be your worst nightmare. You again? What? Get the hell out of here. All right, I'm gone. Oh, man. Always ruining my moment. I really hate that guy, and I thought I'd never see him again, but he found his way back. I apologize for him. But then again, he is right. Yeah, I read that in the bio. A guitar playing dentist. Dentist by day, guitar player by night. Steve Dadaian. And well, he was a friend of Jordan Rudess, and you know, they got together, and he got to play on the album, and I was like, wow. You know, it kind of blew my mind a little bit. I mean, you don't expect that. If you see him in his dentist outfit, if you're being in that chair, you know, which is actually my worst nightmare, and then knowing that this guy, you know, plays on this album, and not just on this album, he does a lot more, so check him out. There's a link in the description where you can check out his music. But of course, he's not the only one playing on the album. It all started during a Dream Theater tour when Jordan Rudess met Darby Todd, who was drumming for Devin Townsend, and they got together, and that was when Jordan Rudess had like, I'm gonna do a new album. He wanted Darby to play on the album, so he's the drummer on the album. Then, well, the keys, of course. Then he got the vocalist, Joe Payne. Then he came to the guitar parts. I mean, Jordan Rudess can do a lot by keyboards, of course, but guitar, that's a little different thing. So he went to his friend, the dentist, who plays guitar at night, and asked him to play on the album. And I gotta say, if you listen to the guitars on the album, they are really phenomenal. They're really amazing. At such a point that I noticed that throughout the entire album, the keyboards are not that much on the foreground. There are moments, especially in the longer tracks, that Jordan Rudess really, you know, gets out on his keyboards and really blows you away. But overall, it's not a keyboard-dominated album. There are a lot of guitars in it. And there was another guitar player, Bastian Martinez, who does a couple of solos on the songs Embers and Into the Lair. And if you listen to the album and you come to those solos, yeah, you will like them. You will like them, definitely. They are really good. So, yeah, that's the third thing I definitely love about that album. Even though it's my nightmare, but a guitar-playing dentist. For the fourth thing I like about this album, initially I wanted to say the epics, because there are 3 songs that clock over 8 minutes. But then I thought, that wouldn't do justice to the entire album, because all the songs are really good. So that's why I decided, you know what, my fourth thing I like about the album are the compositions, is the songwriting that you hear on the album. And the nice thing is that it is an album written by Jordan Rudess. It is a solo album from him, but every musician had creative input in the whole process, and that is what you hear in the songs when you listen to the album, and that what makes this album really stand out. It really stands out. It really becomes a very beautiful piece of work that I absolutely love. Yes, there are these epic tracks. Into the Layer, I mentioned it already, the Alchemist and Eternal. They are really gorgeous songs. There are a couple of really touching ballads on it, and there are, like I said, some experimental moments in it, and yeah, overall it is absolutely a fantastic album. And then the fifth and final thing I like about this album, which is of course Mr. Jordan Rudess himself. I mean, like I said, it's not a keyboard dominated album. They are not on the foreground. Sometimes they are, but overall they're more balanced with the rest of the instruments. But at the same time, I think this is an album that Jordan Rudess can be really, really proud of, because it is a fantastic album. It's a remarkable album. It is an album that people will think like, wow man, this sounds amazing. I mean, that was my reaction when I heard the music, and I've been listening to this album a dozen times at least. And I'm still really impressed, and I still hear new elements in it. So what he created here is something really different. And if you look back at his whole body of work, this album really stands out. It does, and that's what I love about it. It's an exceptional album. It is an album that I've enjoyed from start to finish, and I think you will enjoy it from start to finish just as well. And like I said before, I'm really happy that I listened to this album, because if I hadn't, I would missed out some really beautiful music by some really amazing musicians. Now, another confession, the last one, I promise you, the last one. This review is kind of like an iceberg. You know, what I told you right now, that's just the tip. That's just the tip. But when you start listening to the album, you get the full iceberg. Then you discover so much more that Jordan Rudess has to offer on Permission to Fly. So I suggest you do that. Listen to the album, buy the album, enjoy it, and let me know in the comments what you think of it. Thanks for watching. Cheers!